The beginning, there was the majestic Nile River, symbolizing the primordial waters of Nu, in the ancient Ethiopian and Egyptian Kemetan creation story from the Memphite theology. This grand cultural waterway was referred to as the Gihon, or White Nile, and the Pishon, the Blue Nile, which in Christian theology, representing the first and second rivers of the Garden of Eden in the creation story. And it was along this sacred 4,300-mile African river, which is today the world's largest, that the scientific and salvation history unfolded. Good evening and welcome to another edition of Perspectives in Religion. My name is Wayne Purcell, and as always I greet you in the African tradition of Hotep, peace be unto you. What I read to you was from a message from the first holy book of our ancient African ancestors, and that is the book that is titled Coming Forth by Day and by Night. That was corrupted later by Western European invaders and titled the book the Book of the Dead. Here's another excerpt from this book. It says, I have done away with my wickedness. I have put away utterly all the taints of evil which appertain to me upon the earth. I have purified myself. I have made myself to be like a god. Hail, O ye doorkeepers! I have completed my journey. I am like unto you. I have come forth by day. These words transcend the consciousness that our ancestors strived for, and that was to move from the lower self to the higher self. In other words, coming forth from the lower plane of our material existence and carrying forward on a spiritual mission to an exalted, godlike existence. This is what Christ meant in the Bible when he said to be Christ-like. No different, except for we can take things and corrupt it in the Western world and then point to Africa by taking the same things, yet point to Africa and say that it's corrupted. But yet when we look at the context of the literature that we have today and studied here in the Western world, it's the very same thing coming out of ancient Africa. But yet it was, we have been so disconnected and so removed, and the Western world has done so much to contribute to this false belief and understanding of the African civilization that it's very difficult for the average person in the Western world to see anything good coming out of Africa. But yet, from the beginning, our ancestors left us very big shoes to fill, my beloved. And you know, millions of years ago, between 4 to 5 million, that is, our African ancestors gave birth to the human race. And this is a scientific proof. And then tens of thousands of years ago, somewhere between 200,000 BC and 50,000 BC, our ancestors emerged from the center of Africa, traveling down the Nile Valley with a divine mission to traverse the 4 cardinal points of Earth. And there they began to populate the world and spread civilization to the 4 corners of the earth. In accomplishing this feat, we pay tribute for that profound contribution and their steadfastness to purpose, coming forth and carrying forward to what you see today in our society, in our civilization. And so in honor of our ancestors, we, men, women, African American men and women, stretch forth our arms to the 4 cardinal points to receive their vital energy and healing. And so, my beloved, to the south, we give thanks to the strength and guidance of the Tawa, as they say, visionaries, and again, derogatively called the Pygmies, and the founding parents of modern humanity, and the originators of civilization. That's who they were. To the north, we call on the wisdom and endurance that's manifested in the ancients of Ethiopia and Egypt, who achieved the zenith of civilization. We stretch forth to the east. We call on the tenacity and fearlessness of those adventurers who migrated to the eastern hemisphere. And to the west, we call on the perseverance and the determination of those trailblazers who struggled to restore our freedom and dignity in the western hemisphere. In celebrating the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution, we pay a special tribute to our ancestors of the West for their hard-fought battle to abolish slavery. In fact, it was slavery, that colossal Holocaust, where our divine mission was derailed and distorted. We have had to overcome the falsification of history. Our humanity was maligned. Our culture was denigrated. Our physical bodies were subjugated. And our people were wantonly tortured, brutalized, and killed. Between 100 million and 150 million lost their lives. For over 400 years, our ancestors had to endure the terror of enslavement and the degradation of bondage. Despite all odds against us, we survived, even thrived in some areas. We revolted and established free nations in Brazil, Central America, and the Caribbean. In North America, we built our own colleges and self-sufficient communities. All of this we did in the midst of adversity and severe repression. To the Supreme Being and our ancestors, we honor you for giving us the vision to come forth by day and carry us forward, resulting in the 13th Constitutional Amendment. Therefore, my brothers and sisters, in honor of those great men and women, we pay an homage to you this day, beginning with King Zumbi of 1595, who mounted the first revolt against slavery and established the Republic of Palmares in Brazil. In honor of Zephyrina in Brazil and the female nanny revolutionaries all over the Western Hemisphere who fought and established free communities. In honor of Henry Christopher, Toussaint L'Ouverture, and Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who in succession led the Haitian Revolution against slavery and eventually developed an independent nation from the French. In honor of Vincent Guerrero, our African hero who led the struggle against slavery in Mexico, and as its first president abolished this heinous institution. In honor of the great African chief John Horse of the Seminole, who in collaboration with our Native African American brothers and sisters led the most protracted struggle against slavery in the United States, spanning the pre-Civil War and the Civil War years. And let us not stop there, for we recognize our ancestors who led unsuccessful revolts, but whose heroism and bravery stand as an inspiration to us all, and those who have come before us and those who will come after us, men such as Gabriel Prosser and Jack Bowler, who led the 1800 rebellion in Richmond, Virginia. That Gabriel Prosser, who was a preacher, who preached the gospel, but who saw in that gospel that God was no respecter of persons, and had his men and women and children and whomever, all African Americans, to rise up and strike a mighty blow for freedom. Denmark Vesey, who led in 1822, led a revolt in Charleston, South Carolina, who has not gone down in history and has not received the recognition that he should, but who spearheaded and put together a marvelous plan of over 5,000 to 10,000 slaves, and free and slaves, in the Charleston, South Carolina area, and even moving out beyond the outskirts, who, as the revolt started, was going to continue onward, and as they gathered up momentum, would continue to free the slaves from the plantations, but who was turned in and given up by an Uncle Tom, a Benedict Arnold, a Clarence Thomas mentality that still exists today. We still have them running around today. There's Uncle Toms and Clarence Thomases and Benedict Arnolds, right, who think they're doing the work, the good deeds of those who continue to oppress and discriminate. Yet they were turned out, and because of being letting out the word in trust to those whom they believe were on their side, but whose blood ran thin when it came to overcoming. I think it was Malcolm who gave a very good symbolic statement when he said the house ninja and the field ninja, and it was so applicable in that time, because you had those who, when you talked about uprising and overthrowing the oppression, would say things such as, well, why would we want to overcome the master? Why would we want to do such a thing? I mean, we don't have it any better than we have it now. You see, those were the things that led to the overthrow of men such as Denmark Vesey. And then we had men like Nat Turner, who led the 1831 rebellion. So we give honor and we recognize those successful revolts, those unsuccessful revolts. Men like John Brown, a white man who was our ally, who led revolts in 1856 in Kansas, and then again in 1859 to Harper's Ferry, Virginia. To other exceptional ancestors of ours whose contributions led to the 13th Amendment. Men such as Denmark Vesey, a fearless visionary who wrote the book David Walker's Appeal, which was a landmark work in American history, who wrote perhaps the most radical piece of writing by an African American in the 19th century. He shook up the whole nation with its intensity and its attacks on slavery and white racism. It alarmed Southern slaveholders, yet at the same time it inspired Northern abolitionists and hastened to the conflicts that eventually led to the Civil War. You see, it was men like David Walker who saw the degradation of his people and rose up and wrote his appeal that sent out to all African Americans of the world, but in particularly to all Africans, but in particular to the African American here in this country. And his book was probably around during the time of Gabriel Prosser. It had probably, no doubt, inspired him. It no doubt inspired Denmark Vesey. I'm sure it had an impact on Nat Turner, just as Hades did when they saw the Haitian Revolution. And so all of these things culminated eventually into the 13th Amendment. And so we give recognition to those unsuccessful men and women. But who can forget also Sojourner Truth, the great orator, and the work that she did? We don't know much about it, but we know that she was a great orator and who stood before Congress and condemned slavery in the South. Frederick Douglass, who one day refused to work any longer as a slave for his master and struck a blow for freedom. Harriet Tubman, whose motto was, "Before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave." And men and women who continued to persevere in the face of extreme oppression. We give honor to those, and for all of our unrecognized and unrecorded foreparents and grandparents, we acknowledge your tenacious legacy of resistance. And let it be known and let the record be straight that we never were satisfied, and our people were never happy in slavery or the conditions that slavery heaped upon them. And so today we speak to our young men and women, our middle-aged men and women, our old men and women, that we want to talk about standards of excellence. For it has been the standard of excellence that has been reflected in our values from that slogan, that African slogan that says, know thyself, written on the walls at the Temple of Waset and other centers of learning in Timbuktu and Kemet. And then let us not forget the motto of the Free African Society that states to seek for ourselves. Our parents' institution in the United States. We move through history with the vision of our ancestors, combining spiritual power with social action, just like Dr. King. And when our youth connect their social aspirations to our spiritual foundation, oh, my beloved, we need to give them reaffirmation. For most of our young people are trying to do the right thing. Most of our young people are not involved with antisocial activities. Most of our young people are trying to do the right thing. And usually they are not the community focus, but yet as they continue to matriculate through schools and in face of the obstacles that they have to deal with, yet they continue to move forward. They continue to aspire. And so social healing, my beloved, has to begin with our youth. And social healing begins with spiritual healing. And spiritual healing affirms the fundamental righteousness that persists. You see, despite attempts to distort our positive images and malign our character, you see, the fundamental righteousness still persists in our race. So, to those youth who obey their parents, we affirm you. To those youth who have tried to help others, we affirm you. To those youth who resist the influence of gang and drug involvement, we affirm you. To those youth who got out and who called the gang peace truth, we affirm you. To those youth who finished high school despite the massive distractions, we affirm you. To those youth who achieve a college education despite all odds, we affirm you. To all those youth who go unrecognized for performing good deeds, we affirm you. Because yesterday, my beloved, binds us together, and yesteryear will propel us forward. Forward to that day when it goes back to the Temple of Aset that says, in the beginning there was the majestic Nile River, symbolizing the primordial waters of Nu, in the ancient Ethiopian and Egyptian creation story from the Memphite theology. This grand cultural waterway was referred to as Gihon and Pishon in Christian theology, representing the first and second rivers of the Garden of Eden in the creation story, and was along this sacred 4,300-mile African river, which is the longest river in the world, that scientific and the salvation history unfolded. And so I come to you today because we are on the precedent of looking at the greatness of our people. When we look at Barack Obama, we look at what he has achieved and what he is achieving. You see, now, we also have to understand that because he's in a society such as the Western world, and more particularly in the United States, a man who has a white mother and a black father, yet in this society he's considered black. I don't know why he would be labeled one race, or how easily he could be labeled one race when he has a biracial parent, yet that's the case. And so what we are seeing is how an African American, because certainly if he was born in the time of slavery, he would be a slave, just simply because of the color of his skin. Yet God is no respecter of persons. But yet in a society where the color of your skin can be the difference in success and failure in this country, yet you hear so much talk in the media and other places where people try to say, well, race is not a factor. And just the other day, the young girl said that she was beaten by a 6'4" black man, and because she was a McCain supporter. I mean, if there's something in there, it's more than just the fact of saying she was somewhat demented in her state. She needed some psychological treatment. It was more than that, because what would lead someone to say something like that unless they understood the nature of race in America, and that simply just by saying that 99.9% of the people would automatically, instinctively believe. You see, now this is both black and white. That would automatically, instinctively believe that it was true. Now I use the figure 99.9%. I shouldn't have said that. Of course, that's somewhat that's being a little belligerent, but for the most part, people automatically believe by association, by the subliminal effects of the media, of television, of history, that things like this happen. But yet, the truth of the matter is when a young girl talks about, if you notice, a tall black man, it's always, see, these are the things that people fantasize, tall, dark, and handsome. Those are part of the fantasy. So automatically, without even thinking, that's what will come out of their mouth, you see, tall black man. So we find that race is playing a factor in this campaign. Yes, it's unfortunate, but the truth of the matter is that he has transcended, you see, just what our African brothers and sisters were always aspired to, and that was to transcend their lower animal instincts and transcend their lower existence as human beings, and to the Christ-like concept that would make them one with God. So here we see it now, and so we dedicate this program to men and women like Obama, who's able to transcend race and bring people together, who's able to look over their past and not be angry, vindictive as to the evil and wretchedness that has been cast upon their families, and their legacy today is that of struggle and pain and suffering. So we recognize men like Obama who can rise up above and aspire to the highest office in the land. And that is in a country such as ours that is so divided by race, that he could run for the highest office of the land and not be the underdog. And so even though you and I may say that race is a factor in this, Obama refuses to even suggest that. And maybe he's on to something. Maybe he's on to something, because by those of us who say that race is a factor, perhaps we're playing into the hands of the ignorance and the fear that is so persistent in our nation. And perhaps we don't have to. Maybe we don't have to play to that race issue. And when we do, we fall right into the hands of those divisive tactics that lead us to a nation that is fractured and unable to come together to be all that we can be, because we're so hung up on skin color. So we look at Obama and we recognize that here's a man that refused to bow down to race, recognizing that it's so insignificant. At least it should be, because again, as Christians, and our nation is supposed to be predominantly Christian, where the Bible says that God is no respecter of persons, and that He made us all of the same blood. Yet, for the most part, we all fall into that category of race consciousness. So perhaps this is part of the reason why Obama is crossing over both sides. Perhaps this is also the reason why, for the first time as a Democratic candidate, he has more white votes than any presidential candidate, my understanding, other than Jimmy Carter, or since Jimmy Carter, to vote for him as a Democrat. Yet, and that's amazing in itself, to suggest that a person, and we talk about race as a fact and race as this, yet he has, as the polls are suggesting, more white voters than any Democratic candidate before him, with the exception of Jimmy Carter. I think he had, I'm not sure what the figures are as it relates to Jimmy Carter, but that says a lot about him. It says a lot about his message, where he's going, and where he's going to bring the nation should he win. I hope that he does. I think that we are ready for change, and we need a change. You know, we've had 43 presidents over the years. Some have been good, some have been not so good. But the last couple of ones, you know, have not been very good at all. And so, if we can get someone in here, I could care less what color they are, if they can come in and make changes. But it just so happens that the one person who is professing to make the change, and if he wins office, time will tell, I believe it is Obama. I believe that God has a divine plan, and it's all playing out. It has always been playing out in our lives. We perhaps never recognized it. Some of us have, maybe some of us have not, but I can only speak for myself. But I know that God is working. I know that God is the author of all things. And so we pay homage to our brothers and sisters of the past, those of the present, and Obama, who is both the present and the future, because being the first in a line of succession of 43 presidents, that he will, his name, his accomplishments would go down to our posterity, and it will speak so much. And also it would be healing to our nation. It would be such a healing to our nation to see an African American breaking through a barrier that, for the most part, I never thought was possible. We talked about maybe one day that something like this could happen, but we didn't think it would happen this soon in our lifetime. Because in all intents and purposes, we've been out of slavery for about 150 years. Maybe 160 years is how long we've been out of slavery. Whereas we have been in slavery for over 400 years. And then another 100 years of Jim Crow laws, of lynchings and segregation and things as such. And so to look at what Obama is accomplishing in this short period of time where we have been enslaved longer than we have been free speaks to Obama, yes, but it also speaks to the will of the African American. And maybe it would also help our youngsters to know that they can achieve greatness because we come from a race of greatness. And slavery should not be a symbol in our life to suggest that there's anything that we need to be ashamed of, or that our race, or we should be that we should be of the mindset that those great things in life are not achievable, because they are. God bless Obama. God bless you. For we pay homage to you, men and women who have stayed the course. We pay homage to you in spite of the obstacles and the setbacks in your life, you were persistent and you stayed the course. We pay homage to you who had fallen on hard times, but because you kept the faith, look where you are now. We pay homage to you, my brothers and sisters, who, yes, you've been discriminated against, and yes, you have had to have suffered many setbacks in your life, but you refused. You refused to stay down. And so we pay homage to you. And we lift up with holy hands Obama and what he's about to accomplish. And no, he doesn't owe anybody anything. All he has to do is God's will. And God's will be done. And so to Obama, we say, right on, brother, right on. You've been listening to Perspectives in Religion. My name is Wayne Purcell, and as always, I leave you by saying, Hotep, peace be unto you.